Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Herald podcast, normally recorded in our studio at the Bishopbriggs Media Centre, currently recorded from our volunteers' homes. To keep in touch with us, use our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, which are all at Q and Review. That's CUEANDREVIEW, or get in touch via information@qandreview.com. That's information@CUEANDREVIEW.com. Please like and share our podcasts and give us any constructive feedback.
The Herald, Tuesday the 28th of June 2022. News. Are councils working? Millions to media and marketing firms. This article is by Jamie Mann, The Ferret. Scotland's councils have been accused of spending funds that could have been used for staff pay and public services after paying millions of pounds to media and marketing firms. The Ferret obtained data via Freedom of Information requests detailing at least £2.3 million of work outsourced to private firms between April 2017 to March 2022. While all councils have in-house media teams, they outsourced some activities such as public relations, PR, social media, recruitment, promotion and council staff media training. Unison, the public services trade union, which is balloting council staff for strike action to secure a pay rise, said council staff would be angry at the Ferret's findings. Every penny of council money should be focused on improving delivery of vital services to communities and ensuring staff get fairly paid for delivering them, said Joanna Baxter, Unison Scotland's head of local government. David Miller, the director of Spinwatch, an independent organisation that monitors the role of public relations in spin, said these significant sums spent by Scottish councils should worry all those who believe in accountable local government. The PR industry is endemically bereft of good faith and chronically unable to tell the truth. Councils should invest in open and honest communication with voters, not spin and deception. Orkney Council paid out the most money for media services, £576,000, £180,000 of which went to David Flanagan Media for PR and media management. It also paid £175,000 for social media, web management, film and photography from Start Point Media, and £162,000 for marketing activities from Dynam. The council did not respond to a request to comment. Edinburgh Council spent an estimated £313,785, but did not provide complete spending for 2021-22. Its biggest spend was £36,000 to £48,000 per year to the Corner Shop for PR Scotland and £32,400 per year for 3x1 PR to promote local venues and events. A council spokesperson said the majority of this spend was directed at promoting our cultural and commercial venues prior to COVID, providing the specialist services needed to boost ticket sales and generate significant income from the council. Of the £267,761 spent by Stirling Council, £249,621 went to ING Media to provide PR and marketing support for the Scottish Cities Alliance and to attract property investors at MIPIM, an international property event. The council said the money came from the Scottish Cities Alliance, which includes Stirling and 6 other cities. These funds were simply administered through Stirling Council, a spokesperson added. The council had spent just £18,050 on media consultants, it said. This covered a range of projects, including dedicated support to develop and promote Stirling's investment and economic potential. Shetland Council paid £81,600 to Aspect to provide communications supports for the Orion Clean Energy project. It also gave £67,109 to Message Matters to support the Council's strategic messaging, including for the Fair Ferry funding campaign and the Islands Growth Deal. The Council did not respond to a request to comment. East Lothian Council's biggest bill was £100,944 for Connect Communications to design and distribute 9 editions of the Council's residents' newspaper. There are no plans for further editions, with the Council focusing on online platforms in line with budget commitments, a spokesperson added. They added that media promotion was key to attracting visitors and boost the local economy. Falkirk, Dundee and Glasgow councils each paid £140,000 to £145,000, while 13 others spent less than £100,000. The total amount spent on media by local authorities is likely higher as the level of detail provided differed between councils. Some provided only partial data or none at all. Moray Council listed 6 media firms it had paid in recent years, but failed to list the costs or services provided. Highland Council said its communications team did not hire any media firms. It added individual council departments may have done so, but said it was unable to provide this information. Clackmannanshire, East Renfrewshire, Midlothian, Perth and Kinross, South Lanarkshire and West Dunbartonshire councils did not outsource any media activity. In 2020, Prime Minister Boris Johnson defended his government's decision to spend £130 million of taxpayers' money on PR consultants after facing criticism from Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer. The PM said some of the money was used to counter anti-vaxxer campaigns during the COVID pandemic. This article is by Jamie Mann, The Ferret. The Herald, Tuesday, the 27th of June, 2022. News. SNP urged to scrap £100 million plan to develop climate-wrecking fuel source. This article is by Caroline Wilson. Campaigners are demanding a rethink on £100 million plans to expand the development of hydrogen as an energy source amid concerns that it is inefficient and poses a risk to renewable sources. SNP ministers say Scotland has the resources, the people and the ambition to become a world leader in hydrogen production. However, a new report by Friends of the Earth Scotland found that it has low efficiency compared with other renewable sources, such as electrification, while huge amounts of renewable energy are required to produce it. Around 80% of current renewable energy supplies would be needed to create just 5 gigawatts GW of green hydrogen. The report highlights that heat pumps are 168 to 342% more efficient than hydrogen boilers. Scientists have also warned that far from being low carbon, today's hydrogen production is responsible for huge greenhouse gas emissions, around 830 million tonnes of carbon dioxide, CO2 a year. Huge costs are also incurred from all of the extra conversion steps associated with electrolysis, reforming and gasifying and storage. Although it is one of the most common elements in the universe, hydrogen does not exist naturally in a pure form that can be readily used and must be extracted from fossil fuels, biomass, or water. As an energy vector, hydrogen is very flexible and can theoretically be used in a wide variety of applications beyond its current industrial uses, including domestic heating, power, aviation and shipping, or fuel for buses and trains. Blue hydrogen is made from fossil fuels, but carbon dioxide emissions are captured, transported and stored. CCS. It is most commonly used in the petrochemical and oil refining industries. Green hydrogen is created by splitting water with electricity through a process called water electrolysis. Globally, electrolysis accounts for just 2% of hydrogen production. The Scottish Government has set a target of producing 25 gigawatts in 2045, the year it aims to be net zero, and plans a mixture of blue and green production. The report, Hydrogen's Role in Scotland's Climate Journey, found that electric vehicles are more than twice as energy efficient than hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, while hydrogen boilers may be 53 to 68% more expensive than electric heat pumps. Campaigners are calling on the Scottish Government to end any further public funding to hydrogen produced from fossil fuels and to prioritise electrification in crucial areas such as heating and transport. Friends of the Earth Scotland climate campaigner Alex Lee said, "The evidence clearly shows that hydrogen is either made from climate-wrecking fossil fuels or it becomes a huge drain on renewable energy supplies. Whether it is in heating or transport, support for hydrogen looks like a losing bet when compared to direct electrification through technology like heat pumps and electric buses." A spokesperson for the Scottish Government said, "Both renewable and low-carbon hydrogen will play an increasingly important role in Scotland's energy transition. Our priorities are to get as much renewable hydrogen into the energy system as quickly as possible, while supporting the establishment of low-carbon hydrogen production at scale in the 2020s, linked to carbon capture and storage. The Scottish Government is fully committed to helping the hydrogen sector develop and grow. We are investing £100 million in renewable hydrogen projects over this Parliament, and in addition to this, we have awarded £15 million through our Energy Transition Fund to support the development of a hydrogen hub in Aberdeen and help the region be at the forefront of the energy sector's net zero transformation." This article is by Caroline Wilson.
Recorded from the Herald on the 29th of June 2022, from the sports section. Recorded by Amy. Serena Williams non-committal over future after first round Wimbledon defeat, by Hayley Milne. Serena Williams has left her future open to question after her return to Wimbledon ended in a first-round defeat by little-known Frenchwoman Harmony Tan, stepping out to play singles for the first time since leaving centre court prematurely, and in tears after suffering a hamstring injury in the opening round 12 months ago. Williams was rusty and error-prone. The will remained, and cheered on by a supportive crowd, she looked like she might stumble over the finish line after coming from a set down and then saving a match point in the 12th game of the decider. But instead, Williams suffered just her third first-round loss at a Grand Slam, going down 7-5, 1-6, 7-6, 7 in a deciding tiebreak at 10:35 p.m. after 3 hours and 10 minutes. At 40, the American's time in the game is clearly running out, but she remained vague about her future plans and refused to rule out another tilt at Wimbledon next year. Like I said coming into this, I'm just planning for right now, seeing how I feel just to go from there, she said. Pressed on whether it was her farewell to the All England club, Williams added, "That's a question I can't answer. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows where I'll pop up?" Tan, a 24-year-old debutante ranked 115th, is the type of player Williams used to beat before even stepping on court, but no one, including probably the 23-time Grand Slam singles champion herself, knew what to expect here. Williams recovered from a very shaky start to lead 4-2 in the opening set, but 21 unforced errors proved her downfall. She composed herself after a sharp break to close the roof, winning the second set comfortably, and it looked like she might find a way through when she led 3-1 in the decider. But there were no certainties about Williams here, and she was unable to capitalise on a 4-0 lead in the tiebreak, with Tan celebrating the best moment of her career. "I think physically I did pretty good," said Williams. "I think the last couple of points I was really suffering there. But I feel like in just those key points, winning some of those points is always something mentally that you kind of need. And I did pretty good on maybe one or two of them, but obviously not enough." It has been clear for several years that Williams cannot simply turn up and win Grand Slams now, but with varied business commitments and a young daughter, she has a lot going on in her life besides tennis. The US Open begins in 2 months, and Williams gave a positive indication that she will be at Flushing Meadows in August. "It definitely makes me want to hit the practice courts," she said, "and I feel that it's actually kind of, okay, Serena, you can do this if you want." When you're at home, especially New York and the US Open, and that being the first place I've won a Grand Slam is something that's always super special. There's definitely lots of motivation to get better and to play at home. Williams would surely not have to come to the All England club if she did not believe a record equaling 24th Grand Slam title was still a possibility. Asked if she could be satisfied with Tuesday's loss being her final Wimbledon memory, she said, "Obviously not. You know me, definitely not. But today I gave all I could. Maybe tomorrow I could have given more. Maybe a week ago I could have given more. But today was what I could do. At some point you have to be able to be okay with that." That article was by Hayley Milne.
From the Herald Scotland, Wednesday the 29th of June 2022, from the Voices section, letters. The loss of town councillors accountable to local communities has come home to roost. It is clear that there are serious concerns about the handling of the common good funds in Scotland by today's local authorities. Half of Scots councils accused of mismanaging community funds, the Herald, June 27. Further to those justified concerns, it has to be acknowledged that, throughout Scotland, following the passage of the Local Government Scotland Act 1973, there has been a considerable loss of identity, local accountability and sense of place. That Act, as from May 1975, removed town councils, many of which had existed for hundreds of years, with councils such as Paisley, Kirkintilloch and Kilsyth departing the scene, and installed district and regional councils, such as Strathclyde Regional Council. The unitary councils we have today arrived in 1996, such as East Northamptonshire Council. It is, of course, appropriate that those responsible today for the common good funds are challenged to conduct proper and efficient administration of them. However, it is to be recognised that the structural changes introduced have not been entirely seamless when one considers, for example, the loss occasioned by the demise of elected town councillors answerable directly to the people they served in their particular township and for the actions and omissions therein. Ian W. Thompson, Lindsay. Protests are not the main issue. Monday's abortion summit was saddening to all in Scotland who believe both mothers and babies are of equal value and deserve equal protection in law. Scots cities set to trial buffer zones around abortion clinics, the Herald, June 21. And it was a missed opportunity to ask important questions. Rather than focus on the comparatively small issue of pro-life protests outside some clinics, Leaders ought to be asking why the number of abortions taking place in Scotland has reached a record high. Why is it that so many women each year think ending their pregnancy is the only option for them? This is alarming. Abortion carries profound emotional and physical risks. Our leaders ought to be asking why, given scientific advancements, abortion is permitted up to 24 weeks, past the point of viability, and up to birth where a preborn baby is disabled. And they should be asking if the recent decision to extend controversial home abortion rules is wise, considering the very obvious medical concerns. We want to see a Scotland where all human life is esteemed and protected from conception to natural death, and a Scotland that reckons honestly with issues such as abortion. We would urge politicians to consider every viewpoint in this debate and be prepared to ask tough questions, even if this does not make them popular in the current political climate. Michael Veit, Parliamentary Officer, Care for Scotland, Glasgow. Opposites attract. The duplicity of the Americans baffles me. On the one hand, they overturn the Roe v. Wade Abortion Act stating a right to life, yet on the other hand, they are happy to allow mass murder by means of automatic weapons. Their right to bear arms was constituted solely to protect the country, and at a time when muskets were being used. Steve Barnett, Gargunnock. Toilets that are not so accessible. Elizabeth Crombie, Letters, July 27, writes that it is a threatening proposition to have men who say they are women in women-only spaces. In Glasgow Central Station recently, I was planning not to trek down to the toilets with a large suitcase, so decided to use the accessible toilets. You have to ring a buzzer and then declare that you wish entry. I'm not sure why this is, as no one would likely declare a malevolent intent. The door was opened remotely, and there was a gentleman in a cubicle with the door open, on his phone, shouting his head off in a very agitated state. Needless to say, I decided not to stay. Really, we already have gender-neutral toilets in the way of these accessible ones. The question is, should they be accessible to all, and if they are, should there not be attendants present? I am not planning to use these toilets anytime soon, so we'll invest in a smaller suitcase and use the regular ones in the basement. Irene Monroe, Conan Bridge. Reusing better than recycling. I read with interest and amusement that the response from Thelma Edwards, Letters, June 25, in regard to the new all completely recyclable beer bottles from Carlsberg. Perhaps I am mistaken, but I thought that glass bottles were recyclable. Our local councillors certainly expect us to put glass in the separate bin, which it provides for that purpose. Our milk is delivered from a farm 3 miles from where we live. They do cover a much wider area. The bottles are returned, sterilised and reused, just like they did in days gone by. Surely reusing glass bottles is less wasteful than recycling. It was done before, it can be done again. David Clark, Tarbolton. Double fault in the rules of tennis. I am no great fan of the game of tennis, but as I had nothing better to do on a miserable late June day, I decided to watch some Wimbledon. As I watched, I wondered how the crowd could become so animated as a 100-mile-per-hour serve flashed by the receiver, or if the receiver actually managed to return the serve, usually the second serve, the ball went back and forth, accompanied by occasional grunts and yelps, until one of the contestants hit it out with the lines or into the net. I managed to stay with it for an underwhelming half an hour and concluded that the spectacle would be greatly enhanced if the server was only allowed one attempt and no second serve permitted. After all, in football or rugby, you don't get 2 attempts as a penalty kick or throw-in. Just saying. James Martin, Bearsden. Language difficulties. Recent correspondence concerning the Gaelic language. Letters, June 20th, 21st, 23rd, 24th and 27. Brought to mind a story I heard years ago. During an interview with a Gaelic scholar, the English presenter asked to hear some spoken Gaelic. The interviewee obligingly recited a short passage, during which he was mentioned politician. When the speaker finished, the interviewer said, "I noticed that he used the English word politician in there." Replied the academic, Actually, it's from the Greek. Dougie McNichol, Bridge of Weir. Hurry back to the slow lane. Your tortoise tales, letters June 27 and 28, remind me of the time a tortoise was mugged by 5 snails and, when interviewed by the police, asked if he'd recognise him, he responded, "I'm not sure, it happened so quickly." Oh, for a return to that pace of life. Thomas Brennan in Glasgow. And that was correspondence from today's letters page. From the Herald Scotland, Thursday the 30th of June 2022, from the news section, catastrophic failure of management saw money effectively wasted on mistakes in ferry fiasco. By Emma Sabliak. Mistakes made at the outset of the construction of 2 ferries, delayed by over 5 years, saw money effectively wasted on rebuilding units, the Chief Executive of Caledine Maritime Assets Limited, CMAL, said. Kevin Hobbs claimed that the issues were down to a catastrophic failure of management, not a failure of the workforce. The 2 vessels, the Glen Sannox and the as yet unnamed Hull 802, were originally due to be completed in 2018, but have since been delayed until at least 2023. The delays have also seen the costs soar over budgets, with the latest estimated cost reaching at least £250 million. Mr. Hobbs said units were riddled with errors, which meant extra costs went towards undoing the work and rebuilding them. It comes after former Ferguson Marine Shipyard owner Jim McCall accused the owned company, which handles Scottish Government ferry contracts, of balking at every attempt to carry out an independent resolution. Speaking at Holyrood's Public Audit Committee, Mr. Hawes disputed claims that CMAL interfered in the work carried out in the Ferguson Marine, which runs the last remaining shipyard on the Lower Clyde. He was asked to justify a statement in CMAL's written submission, which claimed the cause of the cost overrun was catastrophic contractor failure. The Chief Executive said, "What we were seeing, basically, is units being built at risk, not signed off by us, not signed off by Lloyds, and what that then meant was that when they were inspected, there were many, many mistakes." So, Mr. McCall said that we interfered. That is not interference. This is actually pointing out that this is a unit that has been built incorrectly. He said he rejected any claims of meddling or interfering in the construction, adding, "I think there was complete confusion by the shipyard. And let's be honest about it, Mr. McCall has no shipbuilding pedigree whatsoever." Explaining the skyrocketing costs, he said mistakes were made from the outset, since the drawings for the vessels were not approved. He said, "If you can imagine one unit of cost, then it takes a unit of cost to undo it. It then takes another unit of cost to do it properly. You can easily see that what should cost 1 unit of cost becomes 3 units of cost. That is the simplest way I can explain what was going on. There were mistakes made at the outset by the builder because they didn't have approved drawings, and when the units were inspected they were riddled with errors and had to be undone and then redone." He added that the costs grew further if mistakes were not identified until the ships were already outside of the shed or afloat, including for the Glen Sannox, which was launched too early in November 2017. The committee also heard that CMAL did not want to publicly announce Ferguson Marine as a preferred bidder to build 2 ferries at an event in 2015. Nicola Sturgeon ultimately attended the event at the Port Glasgow shipyard on August the 13th, 2015, where Jim McCall's company was declared the preferred bidder. However, CMAL, Caledonian Maritime Assets Limited, had advised against making a public announcement, saying discussions about the contract were ongoing, and they did not want to present Ferguson Marine as a fait accompli. Morag McNeil, interim chair of CMAL, said, "We were concerned that it was going to be seen as a fait accompli with the public when we still had significant miles to go on the contract." And that was a report by Emma Sabliak.
Recorded from the Herald on the 30th of June 2022. From the sports section. Recorded by Amy. Bailey Rice rejects Motherwell contract offer as he joins Rangers for undisclosed fee. By David Irvin. Scotland youth international Bailey Rice has rejected a Motherwell contract offer to instead join Rangers. The talented 15-year-old has agreed an Ibrox deal, with Rangers paying an undisclosed fee to Motherwell for the youngster. Rice, who has represented Scotland under-17s on 12 occasions, was part of the Fir Park 2006 squad and was in line to be promoted on a full-time contract this summer. However, the midfielder will instead sign professional terms with Rangers after deciding his future was with the Glasgow side. Motherwell did sign up 9 of the 10 proposed Fir Park graduates this summer, despite significant interest from big clubs on both sides of the border. On Rice's departure, Academy Director Stephen Hamill commented, "Although it's disappointing to lose Bailey at this stage of his development, we respect his decision." On the flip side, though, we are absolutely delighted that so many of the group we had earmarked for graduation into our professional setup have placed their trust in us and the pathway we think we can provide to first-team football. We've already seen so many of them train and integrate with the first-team squad in the first week of pre-season, and that's something that should not only give them all encouragement, but additional hunger and desire to kick on. A club statement added, "Everyone at Motherwell FC would like to thank Bailey for his effort and commitment during his time with the Academy and wish him every success in his future career." Rice is the latest youngster to agree a switch to Rangers, with Cameron Cooper joining earlier this month from Partick Thistle. Millwall teenager Zach Lovelace also made the summer move to Ibrox to join the B team. That article was by David Irvin. Recorded from the Herald on the 30th of June 2022. From the sports section. Recorded by Amy. Hearts manager Robbie Neilson confirms interest in Wolves' Connor Ronan, by Darren Johnson. Hearts manager Robbie Neilson has confirmed his interest in signing Wolves midfielder Connor Ronan. Neilson watched his team wrap up a week-long training camp in Spain with a comfortable 4-0 victory over Europa of Gibraltar. Summer arrival Aaron Forrest notched a brace in between Gary Mackay-Steven and Ewan Henderson strikes in the searing 30-degree heat on the south coast. Newcomers George Grant and Lewis Neilson also impressed in their first outings, and Neilson admits he is still looking to add fresh faces, with Ronan high up on his list. The 24-year-old, who spent last season on loan at St Mirren, has been told he can leave the Premier League club for the right price, thought to be £500,000. Aberdeen manager Jim Goodwin is also keen to take him to Pittodrie after signing him for Saints. Neilson said, Ronan, obviously did very well at St Mirren last year. He is one of a number of guys we are looking at right at the moment. He is a Wolves player, and it will come down to what they want to do. We're still looking to make signings up front, at the back, midfield, everywhere. We just need to add a bit more and a bit more. Neilson used 19 players across the 90 minutes, but gave goalkeeper Craig Gordon a rest following his exertions with Scotland. Gary Mackay-Stevens set the tone for a dominant display with a finish from close range in the 8th minute before Forrest opened his account at the start of the second period. Ewan Henderson got in on the act before the lively Forrest added his second. Neilson, who flies back to Edinburgh with his squad today, added, "I was delighted with Alan. I thought all the boys did well in the game. Alan will improve more. He improved to Ayr in Livingston, and hopefully he will get better here as well. I think he will be a good player for us. We're only a week in, so it's only early doors, but I do think he gives you pace and directness. It was the first pre-season game. Nobody got injured and everybody got through it, so I'm pleased. We got the new guys integrated into the squad and the fitness levels went up, so it's been a great trip." That article was by Darren Johnson.
Herald Scotland recorded on Thursday 30th of June 2022. Arts and Entertainments. Books. The Reverend Richard Coles makes his fiction debut, by Herald Magazine. Fiction. Bitter Orange Tree, Joka Al-Hati. Scribner £14.99, ebook £9.99. The second novel from the International Booker Prize-winning author Bitter Orange Tree examines love in all its forms across multiple generations of one Omani family. Zuhur is struggling to settle into university in England while grieving the loss of her grandmother back in Oman. Bint Amir was a central figure in Zuhur's life, and it is her story, not Zuhur's, that is central to the narrative. Flitting back and forth in time, we learn about Bint Amir's childhood, her struggles, losses, withheld romances, and eventual role as matriarch in a family to whom she is not related, but will grieve her after she's gone. Told from the disjointed mind of a grieving granddaughter, Al-Hearted artfully conveys the pain, both physical and emotional, that comes from mourning missed opportunity and a time to which we can never return. 8 out of 10. Meredith Alone, Claire Alexander, Michael Joseph, £14.99, ebook £7.99. Spending life confined to your home is a scenario that has become more familiar over the past couple of years, but Meredith Alone, the debut novel from Claire Alexander, was conceived before the pandemic. The reader joins Meredith in day 1214 of her self-imposed house arrest. She has her cat Fred, friend Sadie, and a range of jigsaws to support her, but as much of the world starts to filter through the door of her Glasgow home, things start to change. Flashbacks to her former life build up the context for her current situation. Meredith is a likeable heroine who you can't help but root for, and while some of the subject matter is traumatic, this is ultimately a book about hope and the power of friendship. A moving read which will leave you thinking about Meredith, even after you've turned the last page. 8 out of 10. Murder Before Evensong. Reverend Richard Coles, Weidenfeld and Nicholson, £16.99, ebook £7.99. It's easy to compare this cosy crime tale with those of Quizmaster Richard Osman's Thursday Murder Club series, and indeed there is humour and a nostalgic feel to each. Cole's debut tale is set in a sleepy English village. Osman has his ageing amateur sleuths residing in a peaceful retirement village. So far, so similar. But the ex-Strictly Stars book is set in 1988 and has a different feel about it, as Canon Daniel Clement, the local rector, finds himself investigating the murder of a local stabbed in the neck with a pair of secateurs. There are further murders, but the real heart of this book lies in Cole's observations about the trials and tribulations of being a vicar, brackets, presumably taken from his own experience in Findon, Northamptonshire, close brackets. The diplomacy his churchman has to observe in handling spats among the community, the funny asides of parish life, and the wisdom he has so clearly gained in tending his flock, is written from the heart with an insider's knowledge and won't look out of place on a beach this summer. 7 out of 10. Non-fiction, Happy-Go-Lucky, David Sedaris, Little Brown, £18.99, ebook £11.49. In his latest collection of personal essays, humorist David Sedaris employs his usual dry wit to make light of the absurdity of life. The stories meld the mundane, silly and serious. In the essays about his father's decline, Sedaris appears to be processing their complicated relationship, describing how he was made to feel worthless growing up. The reader might feel as though they are prying into deeply personal territory, and the faults Sedaris points out about those closest to him can make for uncomfortable reading. The author can also seem somewhat out of touch when writing about his multiple properties and taste for high-end fashion, but Sedaris should be commended for not skirting around sometimes ugly truths, and doing so in a highly entertaining way. 7 out of 10. Children's Book of the Week, Onyeka and the Academy of the Sun, Tola Akogwu, Simon & Schuster Children's UK, £7.99, ebook £5.99. Onyeka's thick afro hair is impressive, but it is her biggest insecurity and a source of embarrassment. That's until the day her superpowers are unleashed and she discovers she can control her luscious mane with her mind. She's whisked off to the Academy of the Sun, a school in Nigeria where Salari, children with superpowers, hone their skills. Soon Onyeka is enlisted in a fight alongside her friends to save the Salari, but as she battles with her superpowers and tries to unravel the truth about her father, who can she trust? From the moment you discover Onyeka's superpower, this action-packed and fast-paced story has you gripped. Not only is the story empowering, but will resonate with many readers, and it has a tense and twisty plot. 9 out of 10. By Herald Magazine.
From the Herald Scotland, Thursday the 30th of June 2022, from the news section, Scottish growth forecast cut sharply amid crisis, by Ian McConnell, business editor. A leading think tank has cut its forecast of Scotland's economic growth next year to just 0.5% from 1.5% in March, highlighting the impact of the cost of living crisis. The University of Strathclyde's Fraser of Allender Institute notes in its latest quarterly economic commentary, sponsored by accountancy firm Deloitte and published today, that more than half of consumers are reporting spending less on non-essential items. Its analysis also observes that 1/3 of consumers are spending less on food and other essentials. The think tank declares Scotland's economic growth forecast for 2023 has been revised down due to the impacts of cost increases on consumers and businesses and the likelihood that these will persist for longer than previously thought. The Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development forecast this month that the UK would stagnate next year and be the worst performing economy among the group of 7 leading industrial nations by a significant margin. Fraser of Allender says, there is an increasing fear that high inflation will be more persistent than was first thought, with expectations now that it may be 2024 before we get back to more normal levels of inflation. Annual UK Consumer Prices Index inflation had, by May, surged to 9.1%, its highest since 1982, and the Bank of England has projected it will go above 11% in the autumn. Fraser of Allender declares, the outlook has significantly worsened for 2023 since the last set of forecasts in March 2022. The think tank says it is likely that interest rates, which have risen sharply since the start of the year, will see further significant increases before 2023. The Bank of England has since late last year raised UK base rates from a record low of 0.1% to 1.25%. Fraser of Allender has moved its forecast of growth in Scotland this year slightly higher, from 3.5% projected in March to 3.8%. However, the 2022 growth prediction was downgraded in March from 4.7%. Fraser of Allender is now predicting growth in Scotland of just 1% in 2024, having projected 1.4% expansion back in March. The think tank notes that, whilst much of the cost of living discussion is centred on the rising energy and fuel prices, there are also significant increases in prices in the property and rental markets. Fraser of Allender adds, in April, rental prices in Scotland increased to their highest levels ever. Rental prices have risen by 4.3% since February 2020, the second highest increase in the UK behind Northern Ireland. This was a similar story for those looking to get on the property ladder, with house prices at similar levels to the start of the year, however still 2.6% higher than the start of 2020. Marie Spowage, director of the Fraser of Allender, said, the analysis we have carried out indicates that inflation will be higher and persist for longer than we had thought in March. This has the potential to limit economic recovery we hope to see during 2022 and 2023, as consumers cut back on discretionary spending and businesses limit production due to input costs. Fraser of Allender notes, price increases across the board mean that the impacts have been felt differently by different types of consumers. It adds, a younger demographic are more likely to say that property costs and public transport services have increased in price, whereas older age groups are more likely to say that food and fuel have gone up. And that was an article by E. McConnell.
The Herald, Friday the 1st of July 2022. News. Glencoe 17th century turf house opens to the public. This article is by Caroline Wilson. It is the culmination of years of archaeological investigation into the long-vanished pre-clearance settlements that were home to hundreds of people below the rugged mountains of Glencoe. A replica of a 17th century Highland turf house has opened to the public after a painstaking project led by historians, conservation experts and volunteers. The turf, wattle and thatch structure was erected using traditional materials, tools and techniques, and is modelled on one of the dwellings excavated by archaeologists and volunteers at the former township of Achtriachton, near the famous Three Sisters of Glencoe. Visitors can now explore the house for themselves at the National Trust for Scotland's Glencoe Visitor Centre, where its heather thatched roof and earth walls blend into one of the world's most photographed mountain landscapes. They will be immersed in the sounds of history thanks to an installation that conjures up the sounds, speech and songs of life in the glen 300 years ago. Listeners will hear the cry of wildlife and livestock, the commotion of construction and daily toil, the chatter of domestic life in Gaelic, and the sounds of socialising at a traditional evening ceilidh. More than 200 different sound elements were carefully chosen to give the interior an authentic and evocative atmosphere under the creative direction of and sound artist Guy Veal, who has worked on numerous National Trust for Scotland projects. Renowned Gaelic musicians, including Ian McFarlane and Ingrid Henderson, contributed their voices and instrumental pieces, while Gaelic speakers at Acharakel Primary School were recorded to give the babble of children at play. Historic Environment Scotland funded 2 trainees to support the project team while developing their own skills in traditional crafts and heritage interpretation. Lucy Dugan, one of the trainees, grew up in Glencoe and can trace her family back to those who lived here at the time of the infamous massacre when 38 members of the MacDonald clan were killed by soldiers they had welcomed into their homes, led by Campbell of Glenlyon. The mass slaughter on February the 13th, 1692, was ordered as a punishment after Maclean of Glencoe delayed signing an oath, pledging allegiance to King William III, who had recognised the resurgence of the Jacobite cause. Difficult travelling in the absence of a sheriff in Inveraray, where he was sent from Fort William, meant that Maclean did not sign the oath until January the 6th, exceeded the New Year's Day deadline. Ms. Dugan said, "Our Creel house really helps visitors visualise a time when the glen itself would have looked very different to how it does today, home to a bustling community living in wee townships with a rich Gaelic culture. I hope we can rekindle this past while creating new stories here in the future." Visitors can join free daily guided tours around the turf and Creel House, which provide a deeper insight into the project and the history which inspired it. Emily Bryce, the National Trust for Scotland's Operation Manager for Glencoe, said, "Turf and Creel houses were once scattered across the Highlands and are an important part of Scotland's architectural heritage. They tell us a lot about the communities in pre-clearance Highland landscapes like Glencoe. While tourists who come here have often heard of the tragic events of the Glencoe massacre, we want them to go away with an understanding of the lives that were lived here, as well as those that were lost here in 1692. This building now offers a great space in which to immerse visitors from around the world and the community on our doorstep in the history of those who made their homes here for centuries. We are incredibly grateful to the support of all those whose donations have made this project possible and are looking forward to the next stage in its development. This is very much a work in progress, and we will continue to work together with local partners to explore ways to make the most of this unique building." This article is by Caroline Wilson.
From the Herald Scotland, Friday the 1st of July 2022, from the sports section. Serie A side launch bid for Aberdeen star Lewis Ferguson, by Ewan Peaton, sports writer. Aberdeen have received a bid from Serie A side for starman Lewis Ferguson, according to the report. Lecce are said to have made a £2 million bid for the Scotland international. The Scottish Sun say that the newly promoted Italian side see the midfielder as a potential big part of their plans next season. The report also states that Ferguson is enthusiastic about a move abroad. They also say that a deal could go through next week. Millwall were interested in Ferguson, however, are believed to have dropped out the running following the player's believed desire to test himself abroad. Another 2 Italian clubs are also said to be interested in signing Ferguson. And the article is by Ewan Peaton. From Herald Scotland, Friday the 1st of July 2022, from the sports section. Chelsea star Billy Gilmore trains with Glenafton Athletic ahead of pre-season return. by Ewan Peyton. Billy Gilmore has been pictured training with a West of Scotland Football League side ahead of his return to Chelsea next week. The Scotland international will head down south for pre-season training with Thomas Tuchel's men in the coming days. Following a short break after being involved in the latest round of Scotland matches, the 21-year-old seems to be raring to go before reporting for duty at the Premier League Giants. As the midfielder previously revealed, he likes to spend some of his time during the summer back home in Ayrshire with his family. And a photo has emerged online showing that despite Gilmore still being on holiday, he's been putting in the hard graft in preparation for pre-season at Chelsea. Glenafton Athletic, based in New Cumnock, shared a pic on social media last night of the superstar after taking part in a pre-season session of their own. Pictured with boss Ryan Stevenson, formerly of Hearts, Partick Thistle and Ayr United, Gilmore could be seen wearing the Glens red and white strip. It's understood that Gilmore's friendship with Sam McGee, who plays for Glenafton, is the reason behind his close relationship with the local Ayrshire club. Alongside the photo, the club tweeted, "We were delighted to welcome Champions League winner, Chelsea player and Scotland international Billy Gilmore to our second session of pre-season training. This session was geared towards raising the fitness levels of the players for the upcoming season, and we hope the fitness work will be of a great assistance to our players and Billy before he returns shortly to Chelsea to start their pre-season preparations. Billy is a regular at our games whenever he's back in Scotland, and everyone at the club would like to wish Billy all the best for the upcoming season with Chelsea." Gilmore recently saw his deal at Stamford Bridge extended after Chelsea triggered a clause in his contract. Meanwhile, Stevenson is preparing for his first full season in charge of the Glens after taking over the reins midway through the last term. The ex-Chelsea youth is assisted by Mark Roberts at Loch Park, with fellow former Kilmarnock player Alan Kerr taking up a role on the coaching staff. And that was an article by Ewan Peyton.
Herald Scotland on Friday the 1st of July. Issue of the day, Changing Shopping Habits. An article written by Maureen Sugden. The surging cost of living is altering our shopping and eating habits as consumers make every effort to tighten the purse strings in these challenging times. New research from the Fraser of Allender Institute finds a third of Scots are reducing expenditure on food and essentials, with more than half spending less on non-essential items. It ties in with figures from data analysis firm Kantar, which found bills at the supermarket rose by 8.3% in the last month, up on the same period last year, as inflation increased to its highest point in 13 years. And now, Kantar says based on this, the average grocery bill will rise by £380 this year. So shoppers are changing practices, as well as discount stores such as Lidl and Aldi seeing growth surges 9.5% and 7.9% respectively in the 12-week run-up to June. Shoppers who stick to their traditional supermarkets are switching to cheaper own-label brands. Kantar says branded item sales have fallen by 1% and own labels gone up by 12%. Shoppers are also turning to cheaper frozen foods. Sainsbury's chief executive Simon Roberts said in a recent interview that consumers are watching every penny and every pound, adding that areas like frozen are increasing. Meanwhile, the use of technology in stores is on the up, such as self-scanning items to avoid till shock, Mr. Roberts told Reuters, allowing shoppers to be price aware. Another new trend is buy for now, not later, shoppers purchasing for now only. Tesco CEO Ken Murphy said, "What we're seeing is higher frequency shopping trips, so there's an elevation in the number of shopping trips and we're seeing basket sizes coming down a little bit." Cheaper cupboard staples are up as diets return to basics to accommodate cost. Rice and grains rose 11% and canned beans and pasta rose 10% and 9%. Asda's CEO, Lord Stuart Rose, said last week that shoppers are setting themselves £30 limits at the petrol pumps and also at the checkouts. He told the BBC, "What we're seeing is a massive change in behaviour. People are trading back. They're worried about spending." Another key trend is that loyalty cards are aiding purchasing practices as shoppers look for cut prices and points accumulation to make grocery shopping more worthwhile. An article written by Maureen Sugden. Herald Scotland on Friday the 1st of July. Opinion. Is Nicola Sturgeon's future set out in a television drama? A column written by Alison Rowett, senior politics and features writer. How are you today? You know, after the First Minister's big announcement. Yes, these things do happen, and undoubtedly what's for us will not go by us. But really, how are you in yourself? Matters have come to a serious pass in Scotland when that question is asked, and so it was this week in many households. Certainly there's been plenty of time from the last referendum to prepare a response to the new one. We knew this was coming, yet when it happened, some of us in the heaving mass of undecideds were not quite sure how we felt. That won't do. Remember last time, most set out, or said they did, with the intention of keeping things civilised. Before you knew it, there were toe-to-toe, spittle-flecked exchanges going on within families and among friends and colleagues, demonstrations outside the Beeb, eggs and insults flying. This time there has to be some formulation, an expression of neutrality that allows a person to sit out the argument until such time as they wish to join in, or not. We could stick with the old don't know or undecided labels, or go with something different to mark this as Referendum 2.0. When asked in company if Scotland should be an independent country, one could, for example, say, "Do you know, I'm taking the Switzerland's option on that for now." Or how about the Father Ted formulation? That would be an ecumenical matter. Close, but not quite. The ditherers, too judgmental. The switherers, the London press, who will soon be turning up by the coachload to once again explain Scotland to itself, oh joy, won't understand. Perhaps, in honour of the aggregate polls, the undecided should call ourselves the 50-50 cohort. Membership of the 50-50 is open to anyone who can hold two competing ideas in their head at one time, giving equal consideration to both. Temporary membership is available for those who think they know how they will vote, but are having a wobble. A lot of wobbling went on last time. Given the added complexities of Brexit and other known unknowns, there could be even more of it in the run-up to the 19th of October 2023. As you'd expect, opinion is split among the 50-50 on the wisdom or otherwise of the First Minister's course. There's a part of us that's scunnered at doing this again, that sighs from the very depths of our collective soul at the thought of another debate on a currency union versus a new free-floating Scottish note. Such weariness is intensified by the suspicion that the whole process is a dog and pony show to distract from the fact that Miss Sturgeon and her scandal-hit party are out of ideas. They can't cope with the realities of here and now, be it record waiting times for cancer treatment or overdue, over-budget ferries, so they want to talk about the future. As schemes go, this one is outrageously implausible. The Supreme Court could rule that the Scottish Government can go ahead with a vote without Westminster's agreement, but given how clear the legislation is, plus precedent, it's extremely unlikely to do so. As for turning a general election into a single-issue vote about independence, wouldn't that prove the SNP's detractors right, that independence is the only thing they care about? And what if the electorate showed its displeasure by voting any party but the SNP? That could mean a generation, a proper one, in the wilderness. For more on the dangers of hubris, see Scottish Labour of old. So much for the voice of the scunnered. Elsewhere among the 50-50, there exists a sneaking admiration for Miss Sturgeon for having the strength of conviction to go ahead with the odds against her. As you'll see from the media, social and mainstream, everyone is a constitutional expert now, much in the way thousands became virologists overnight during the pandemic. Few hold out hope that the First Minister's cunning plan will work. Many among the 50-50 might look at the response to the First Minister's announcement and feel a certain sisterly sympathy for her. There is some pretty blatant sexism going on in some quarters. Margaret Thatcher had to contend with being called TBW, or that bloody woman. This has been shortened to TW for Miss Sturgeon. That woman feels more contemptuous somehow. She should trademark it and make some money. That's another favourite, calling her she, not in a Charles Aznavour affectionate fashion, but more in a who's she, the cat's mother kind of way. She didn't deliver her statement, she droned on. Questions were asked, not just about her competence, but her intelligence. How very dare she? It may seem rich to defend someone in such a powerful, privileged position as Miss Sturgeon, but come on, lads, we can do better than barely disguised misogyny. The same goes for condemning the very idea of another referendum as a costly, foolhardy abomination. It was there in black and white in the manifesto. There's no small print trickery going on here. Imagine if the positions were reversed, that Scotland, having left the Union, wanted to rejoin. If parties representing that view were voted into power again and again, but no further action followed, wouldn't you feel aggrieved? Whatever your view on the announcement, the process is now in motion. Who knows where we go from here? Keir Starmer stepping down, anyone? If only we could glimpse the future. By the power of television drama, that might just be possible. Oh, spoilers ahead. Scotland's First Minister, we know, is obsessed with Borgen, the Danish drama about a woman Prime Minister, Birgitte Nyborg. By the end of the new series on Netflix, Birgitte, now Foreign Secretary, has had enough. She's tired of trying to keep her warring party together. They, in turn, accuse her of trading her principles for power. Even her beloved mentor has turned on her. Stop me if you've heard this one before. Challenged for leadership, Birgitte realises the error of her ways and quits. Don't worry, though. Turns out she's quietly wangled a job as the country's new EU Commissioner with a six-figure salary and benefits to match. All is well that ends well, for Birgitte anyway. Wonder if Scotland will be as fortunate. A column written by Alison Rowett.
From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 4th of July 2022, from the sports section, Peterhead boss Jim McInally on growing recruitment challenges in management, by Ewan Payton. Peterhead manager Jim McInally insists some clubs in League One can no longer compete with wages being offered to players from those in the Lowland League. Scotland's longest serving manager revealed he's suffering from a recruitment nightmare this summer. Peterhead only have 10 players available ahead of this weekend's Premier Sports Cup tie against Aberdeen. While the league campaign is by far the most important objective for McInally, the experienced boss doesn't want his side to be embarrassed in the group stages of the club competition. Speaking to BBC Sports Sound, he explained the growing difficulties of having to compete with teams in the divisions below Peterhead. He said, "We've lost 14 players this year. I think I've got 13 or 14 signed players, but there's only 10 available for next Sunday. What I find is that Lowland League clubs are now spending more on wages than we are. A few years ago, we could maybe offer £100 more to a player from Glasgow, and that would entice him up to Peterhead, and now roughly the same wages they can get it at Lowland League level and don't want to travel." McInally went on to reveal he currently has no goalkeeper after a loan deal with Aberdeen fell through because they were drawn against the player's parent club. "We just need to hope we have a good week and we can recruit some players," he said. "But the league campaign is what it's all about. I am trying not to be coerced or forced into signing players just for the sake of 3 or 4 games in the Premier Sports Cup. By the same token, you're not wanting to embarrass yourself." McInally is not the only manager in SPFL who has experienced the challenges of signing players in the current market. New Hamilton gaffer John Rankin has yet to get a new recruit on board at the Lanarkshire side this summer. The rookie boss took over the reins at the Championship club just last week, as he was the man selected to succeed Stuart Taylor. He added, "Quite a quick turnaround for myself. We need bodies as well. A lot have left from last season and we haven't signed anyone yet." Rankin revealed he has a slightly different issue to contend with though, with players rejecting full-time offers in order to combine well-paid jobs with part-time careers instead. "The salaries in football in general are becoming smaller, albeit you take out England and the major leagues," he said. Meanwhile, others were holding out for bigger clubs or higher wages, as they see the start of the season as the last week in July when the league starts. And that was an article by Ewan Payton. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 4th of July 2022, from the sports section, Alan McCoy pays emotional tribute to Rangers hero Andy Gorham, by Ewan Payton. Alan McCoy has paid an emotional tribute to his late friend Andy Gorham. The Rangers icon sadly passed away at the weekend after a short battle with cancer. The goalie, 58, revealed he had been diagnosed with the disease in April this year. On Saturday, he tragically lost his battle with the illness as tributes flooded in from across the football community. McCoist was with the ex-Scotland international as he tragically died, as he supported Gorham in his final moments. And McCoist saluted Gorham for his immense bravery shown throughout his battle. He told TalkSport, "Andy got the news 10 weeks ago that he had been diagnosed with incurable cancer. He was given 6 months. The speed of it has been absolutely frightening. However, having gone to see him on a regular basis, first of all at the hospital in Wishaw, East Kilbride, eventually the hospice in Airdrie. First of all, I would like to thank everybody who looked after Andy. These girls and guys in these places are absolutely remarkable, the job they do. I was there on Saturday morning with Bomber Brown. The two of us were at his side when he passed, with his son, Danny, and his ex-wife Miriam. It was absolutely tragic. However, we were all taking great courage from the fact his bravery was absolutely incredible. I kept coming back to the boys when I was on the phone to them, whoever it may be. I thought the goalie was actually in a state of shock with the news, which would be understandable, but he actually wasn't in a state of shock. It was a remarkable bravery like I've never seen in my life before. He never changed, the whole thing never changed, so it wasn't shock, it was just a bravery. He succumbed to this horrendous illness, and we're all in absolutely no doubt that he is free from pain and in a far better place. He was a pal, he was the best goalie I've ever played with, he was absolutely unbelievable as a goalkeeper, and I would have to tell you he was one hell of a man. He had a bit of everything in his makeup, and it is a sad, sad loss, and tragically taken away far too soon. 58 is not an age at all. We will all miss him desperately." And that article was by Ewan Payton. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 4th of July 2022, from the Voices section, Doug Marr, the arts can be the key to closing the attainment gap. It's not always easy to find good news stories about education, and, believe me, I try. Headlines are too often dominated by the latest chuntering of one or other of the teaching unions, the default position being the glass is half empty. The sabre of strike action is increasingly rattled over pay, workload and pupil behaviour. More generally, there's little good news about closing the attainment gap or an emerging consensus on the curriculum and assessment. That's why it was refreshing to come across a couple of recent stories that suggested it isn't all doom and gloom. Both feature the arts, and music in particular. It's hard to believe 14 years have passed since the big noise came to the Raploch, a housing estate on the edge of Stirling that was a byword for poverty and deprivation. The big noise was inspired by El Sistema, an initiative from Venezuela that harnessed the power of music to improve the learning and lives of youngsters from that country's poorest communities. This year marks the 10th anniversary of the memorable concert in the Raploch performed by local youngsters, sharing the stage with the Simon Bolivar Youth Orchestra from Venezuela. The conductor on the night was the renowned Gustavo Dudamel, an enthusiastic believer in El Sistema and the transformative power of music making. Dudamel recently gave a BBC interview, during which he talked movingly of that night and its wider impact. He talked about how poverty is often equated with the lack of material things, but, in his opinion, the worst thing about poverty is considering oneself a nobody in society. That creates a sense of exclusion, not only in young people, but also in their families and wider communities. Dudamel believes in the power and beauty of the art to reverse that process and foster feelings of positivism and inclusion. As with any initiative, it can be difficult to maintain momentum and assess lasting impact. Nevertheless, the statistics are encouraging. 14 years ago, it's believed there wasn't a single youngster from the Raploch learning a musical instrument. Today there are 400 and it has its own symphony orchestra. A number of youngsters from the estate have progressed to higher education to study music. The initiative has spread elsewhere, including Torry in Aberdeen. Only last week, the Torry Big Noise Orchestra impressed as part of a celebration of the Doric in the northeast. The second good news story came from unlikely sources, the Department of Education and Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport in England. Together, they have produced a national plan for music education with a budget of £25 million. The ambition of the plan is underlined by its full title, The Power of Music to Change Lives. It's part of the Levelling Up agenda that recognises the potential of music to improve educational outcomes for all learners, in particular those who may have been left behind. Regrettably, the Scottish Government has been slow to harness that potential to address its top priority, closing the attainment gap. It's fair to say the Government has difficulty understanding the question, let alone the answer. It fails to grasp that most of our lowest achievers have been turned off by education. Their experience is characterised by a sense of failure and lack of enjoyment. Unsurprisingly, they switch off or seek kudos from their peers to disruptive behaviour. The arts and music in particular offer a way to reverse that download, self-fulfilling spiral. Many years ago, I worked in a school serving a severely deprived catchment. Its strength was a cohort of visionary art and music teachers who provided pupils with a sense of achievement and enjoyment. That rubbed off in other areas of the curriculum. Almost overnight, success became something to be celebrated, not hidden away. Crucially, we had the freedom to tweak the curriculum and timetable to use the arts to better meet the needs of our youngsters in the under community. That proved far more effective than the dead hand of yet more centrally driven reforms and improvements. Over the years, hundreds of youngsters learned to play musical instruments and work cooperatively in bands and orchestras that travelled to Europe to play. The positivity and sense of pride spread to parents and the wider community. They no longer believed they were nobodies. The Scottish Government needs to learn from the Rachwalch and reflect on the English National Plan for Music. Closing the attainment gap is a complex issue, and there is no silver bullet. Doing the same thing repeatedly and expecting a different outcome is an exercise in futility. Instead, how about empowering schools and teachers to develop the arts in ways that meet local needs? In doing so, they can foster the success and enjoyment, without which there can be no learning. The Rachwalch, Tory, and England have shown us the way. The arts can change lives. Let's now enlist them to close the attainment gap. And that article is by Doug Marr. Our columns are a platform for writers to express their opinions. They do not necessarily represent the views of the Herald.
Herald Scotland recorded on Monday, 4th of July 2022. Arts and Entertainments. Arbroath Smokies Scots Word of the Week by Dictionaries of the Scots Language. Arbroath Smokies don't have their own entry in the Dictionary of the Scots Language, but are cited in the entry for smoke. The older generation argue that the old-time smoky is a haddock freshly caught by line and smoked in the Arbroath way. Research suggests that many of the earliest appearances of Arbroath Smokies are in newspaper advertisements. An early example, brackets 1888, close brackets, comes from McSimon and Company in the Greenock Telegraph and Clyde Shipping Gazette. We also offer splendid value in Arbroath Smokies and Aberdeen haddocks. In 1902, an intriguing headline appeared in the Dundee Evening Post, Arbroath Smokies in Court. Apparently, a fish curing works in the Aberdeen were charged with being the owner of 112 boxes of cured fish known as Arbroath Smokies, which were unfit for human food and were intended for sale. Recipes using Arbroath Smokies appear in many cookbooks, of course, and the Arbroath Smoky is nothing if not a versatile ingredient. For example, an interesting recipe for an Arbroath Smoky omelette appeared in the Arbroath Herald and Advertiser for the Montrose Boroughs in February 1949, and a restaurant review from the Dundee Courier of January 2022 reported another starter to highlight is the delicious cream of Arbroath Smoky soup, which is truly ambrosial, and recommended the pancake made with Arbroath Smoky, flaked, fresh off the bone, and a double cream sauce served inside a thin savoury pancake. Arbroath Smokies were awarded Protected Geographical Indication status in 2004, which means that a haddock can now only be called an Arbroath Smoky if it is made within 8 kilometres of Arbroath. Scots Word of the Week is written by Pauline Cairns-Spito. Visit DSL online at https:// by Dictionaries of the Scots Language.
The Herald, Tuesday the 5th of July 2022. News. Anna Sarwar to pitch Labour alternative to independence. This article is by Emma Sabliak. Scottish Labour leader Anna Sarwar is to reveal an alternative to independence as a pitch for Scotland's future in a speech later today. The party is expected to counter the SNP's independent route with a series of papers on how it expects to deliver the reform that our politics needs and unite our country. It comes after Nicola Sturgeon unveiled her route map towards a second independence referendum at the start of last week. The First Minister wants to hold a second vote on leaving the UK on October the 19th, 2023, and is seeking permission from the UK Supreme Court to get a referendum go-ahead without Westminster's consent. Now, in an attempt to offer Labour's vision for Scotland's future, Mr Sarwar will publish the first paper during a speech in London. Mr Sarwar will call for a new legal duty of cooperation between governments in Westminster and Holyrood and joint governance councils, which he claimed would provide fresh models of intergovernmental working. He announced his intentions to work alongside UK Labour in a column within the Daily Record. Reform plans for the House of Lords will also be set out in the proposals. He claimed that both the SNP in Scotland and the Conservatives in Westminster stand to gain politically from the chaos of division, adding that this ensures bad government thrives and people pay the price. Mr Sarwar said Scotland is cursed with two bad governments who benefit from a political climate which seeks to maximise disagreements and disordered relationships across the UK. Repeated campaigns for a referendum and constitutional disputes are used as a distraction from the SNP's failures in government. The challenges faced by Scottish society are treated as reasons to support separation from the UK instead of issues in need of a Scottish government solution. Speaking to BBC's Radio Scotland on Monday morning, Scottish Labour's constitutional spokesperson Sarah Boyack said conflict between governments in Westminster and Holyrood undermines policy making. She said we've got two governments who are not interested in making devolution a success. The Tories actively want to undermine it and the SNP want to get rid of it altogether. This article is by Emma Sabliak. The Herald, Tuesday the 5th of July 2022. News. The Stone Stacking Championships at Dunbar. This article is by Vicky Allen. They loom up from the ground along our coastlines, appearing in the landscape like strange, abstracted figures watching our beaches. Some shorelines look like busy rock festivals, crowded with forms, staring perhaps out to sea, or poised in perfect balance, as if waiting to be caught by the wind. Stone stacks now seem to be everywhere, infinitely Instagrammable, and often virally shared. The creation of the perfect tower is almost as common an occupation now as sandcastle building. Perhaps the most famous stone stacker globally is the Canadian stone balancer, Michael Grab, who says of his art, "It is a kind of yoga that unites the stones, the environment and the practitioner. There is a moment I call the 0 point, at which I intuitively feel that the structure is in equilibrium. At that moment, there is no perceived separation between self and the environment." The East Lothian town of Dunbar is at the centre of this craze in Scotland, home to the European Stone Stacking Championships, first set up there in 2016 by James Craig Page. The artist had come to stone stacking having seen examples of it shared online. He began trying it out himself and found his arrangements became increasingly elaborate. I often found nature, he writes on his website, was providing me with the next stone without any deliberate thought on my part. Craig Page believes there are so many benefits to the meditative process of stone stacking and would even like to see it put on the national curriculum. It's like a creative meditation, he told me once. As soon as you start to practice this and engage in it, you go into this very meditative state and you don't think about the future, you're just totally in the moment. He has even started doing workshops with children in schools. It's been remarkable. A lot of the children that are least attentive in the class that have been labelled with ADHD seem to get it. Stone stacking is a movement that has gathered momentum. In recent years, the practice has become so ubiquitous that some have become concerned at the impact of all this stone shifting on the environment and warned those who practice it to do so responsibly. This year, the championship has been incorporated into a new week-long European Land Art Festival, or ELAF. The main stacking competitions take place on the weekend of July the 9th to the 10th at I Cave Beach, Dunbar. This article is by Vicky Allen.
And that was this week's The Herald podcast, normally recorded in our studio at the Bishopbriggs Media Centre, currently recorded from our volunteers' homes with the publisher's kind permission. Thanks for listening.